So as you know, on Thursdays, usually João presents our studies of Spirit's book, but he had to go to Brazil on a semi-emergency. His mom is quite ill. And we had just finished the conclusion on the very last meeting, and we are about to start once again the studies of the Spirit's book for the fifth or sixth time, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And again, it is true, it's not kidding that I'd say that every time it seems like it's the first time. The book is the same, but we are not the same. We had hopefully acquired some more knowledge, acquired greater ability to understand in greater depth this wonderful book. So therefore, we will read this book as a new book. And I hope it is the same for each one who is with us all those years and going through the introduction of the and to the conclusion. So today I'm going to speak a little bit of the introduction. I'm going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read a little bit. And when it comes to the Promegomena, we will read the whole thing together with short. The introduction, as you can read over there, introduction to the study of Spiritism. So it's not just an introduction, it's an introduction to the study of Spiritism, not a simple introduction of the book. The introduction of the book is actually the Prolegomena that we're going to read. João had prepared with slides, a whole lecture that he has shown to us in the past already. Of this introduction, you don't have to read everything. Since he had to go to Brazil, like at an emergency basis, and did not have time to go to those lectures, I'm going to speak a little bit of this first part, do a quick read. Hopefully you get to the Prolegomena today. If not, you complete the next week. I don't see the need of reading the whole thing, especially because the conclusion of this book is quite similar to the introduction to the study of Spiritism, and we just did that conclusion. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this introduction. And again, it's not an introduction to the book, the very beginning of it is an introduction to the study of Spiritism, okay? Kardec, as you know, is very particular with the proper use of words, as all of the more evolved spirits. And when he says introduction to the study of Spiritism, that is exactly what he meant. If it was introduction of the book, you would say only introduction, right? So it's two different things here. And I like everybody to pay attention to these details because that makes a big difference. So let's start with talk a little bit of the very quick, brief synthesis of the history of the events that started happening in the 1800s that led to the genesis of Spiritism in France. It starts right here in our state of New York, in a city called Hillsville, 1948, when you have one of the first documented communications of the spirits via cryptography, and the beginning of the physical phenomena, the mediumistic physical phenomena, the spirits communicating with us. So 1948 with the Fox sisters, and there was some development of a spiritualist church in New York, in the United States. did not have an opportunity to flourish well over here and eventually was moved back to Europe. And in Europe, he found more fertile ground to develop the process that would lead to the birth of Spiritism. As early as 1953, the first spiritualist church was founded in England. And in England, and especially England and France, there was a lot of movement in the sciences with mediumship taking place. It was primarily physical phenomena with cryptography. We're going to see all these terminologies later in the studies of the medium's book. But there was a lot of movement of inanimate matter that could not be explained by the science of that time. And it was indeed mediumistic phenomena, as later would be clearly explained by this doctrine. But in the beginning, like in very science, a very field of studies, things happening that we don't know how, when, why, and it only development of the science itself that those answers are, those questions are answered, right? In 1854, Hippolyte Lyon, he valued in his art, had a friend, Mr. Fortier. They were colleagues in the study of magnetism. Mr. Fortier was a magnetizer, so was Mr. Rivaillot, Mr. Hippolyte Lyon. They were both disciples of Mesmer, you know Mesmer that developed mesmerism and came with the hypothesis of human energy. Was the great developer of hypnotism, a scientist, a doctor himself, an intellectual, not a mystical by any means. And Mr. Fortier told Mr. Hippolyte Lyon that throughout Paris, there are those sciences in which inanimate matters were being magnetized. That's what he thought was happening. And they were defying gravity or doing all kinds of things that our science could not really explain. And Kardec, yeah, we have studied that the human energy can be transferred to other humans. It can be transferred to animals. We can be transferred even to trees. That's being demonstrated. Why not inanimate objects? But perhaps it's possible. Then pay attention. Anyone who wants to unmute themselves to question, please do so, okay? And the science has become extremely popular in France. Imagine like in the 70s, 80s, that New York City, you have a discotheque every corner of the city. That was sciences in Paris at that time. Everybody was being entertained by those kinds of fulfilling the curiosity of those kinds of activities at that time. In the same way that discotheques disappeared at one point when everybody got bored with in New York City, the same thing eventually happened in Paris, right? Mr. Fortier returned once to Kardec and said, listen, something really weird is happening now. Those magnetized tables, they are doing more than just moving around. They are actually providing intelligent answers to questions. And now Kardec said, well, now you're coming to the ridiculous side of it, right? Because Tables does not have intelligence, does not have a brain that could not be completely ignored everything and continue with his work. Mr. Hippolyte was a very busy man as an educator of educators. But later on, he was invited by some individuals to whom he had the utmost respect for their moral qualities, for the intellectual qualities. They were all intellectual individuals that were taking part in those seances, and particular two of them, I'm horrible with names, I'm going to remember those names now, were having their own homes, and they keep inviting Kardec to come and take a look at it. And because of the respect towards those individuals, you decide to go and take part in one of those on those seances. And those seances primarily were physical phenomena in which tables would turn around, would levitate. There was something that was kind of the Ouija board, that an object would move towards a letter here and there, and those letters would form a words, and those words that would form a sentence, and then you'd get silly answers to silly questions. Even those more intellectual individuals taking part of that seances was primarily being entertained and fulfill the curiosity. And Kardec, Mr. Rivaillot, Denisard, when he saw that, first, he was intrigued. Second, he had the necessity to eliminate any physical cause, to eliminate any tricks, charlatanism, did his own investigation and concluded that at least on those house of serious individuals, there was no tricks. There was no one tried to pull anybody's legs. The phenomenon was happening naturally without any human interference, so to say. And he continued his studies, and he did find a lot of tricks, a lot of charlatans in other sciences. And he concluded that the intelligence and of human beings, they'll do everything to make a buck, including work with false phenomena, with false mediumship, which is a big problem because it created this mistrust of the general public. As Kardec says, yes, there are fake wines out there, but that does not mean that there is not true wines out there as well. And unfortunately, the fake wines creates doubt for the true wines, and the same thing with the phenomenon of mediumship. So Mr. Rivaillot went from being cynical towards those seances to a process of using scientific methodology, eliminate all the possible causes of the noises, of the tips, everything that was happening in those seances, and ask, well, if there is no human influence and those inanimate objects is providing intelligent answers to questions, there has to be an intelligence behind of it. It's not coming from the table. It's not coming from the chair. There must be an intelligence behind that. And from that point, he started his very serious work towards that. In 1855, the month of May, actually, in one of the houses of Mrs. Roger, he was able to collect some manuscripts actually from two different houses. One of Mr. Roger and the other from a medium, I believe her name was Jadot. Yes, Mr. Jadot. And they had collect some informations from, taking notes of all the seances, all the meetings that they had up to that time, and they gave to Kardec, and they're saying, you know what, this may end up being a book. I can get a book together, those things, and start working on this. And at that point, Mr. Rivail had already decided that whatever phenomenon was happening over there, whatever those intelligence behind of the phenomenon was coming to announce themselves, was not just for entertainment. It was not just for curiosity. There was a bigger reason behind of it. This could provide to us answers to many questions that we have, mostly philosophical questions of humanity, right? Who you are, what are we doing here, what is the meaning of all of this? The question that everyone who thinks would have, right? So the idea of writing this book becomes stronger and stronger with him. And when he was pretty much ready to put things together and publish a book, the Spirit of Truth in 1856 comes to say, hey, wait up. Put everything aside. This is not how it's going to happen. Indeed, you're absolutely right. We are not here to entertain anyone. We are here to provide some very important revelations. And this book that you're about to write is a series, a book that indeed will answer most of those questions. But those manuscripts are full of observations and prejudices of those who wrote it, incarnate and discarnate. This, you can use this as a basis. You don't have to trash it, but let's start the work of this book now. And it was in that process, at that point, at the same time, also 1856, he received the revelation, not only the Spirit of Truth. Now we are here bringing the promised consoler, but he also received the revelation that in previous incarnation he was a druid, and a druid is a priest of the ancient Celtics, individuals who had already experienced the phenomena of mediumship. Of course, I didn't call it then, but individuals were already open to the spiritual experiences and dealing with forces of nature. And Kardec was one of those druids, and his past name, and his name in that reincarnation was Allan Kardec. So upon understanding that was his mission, to codify that new revelation, that through the revelation that Spirit is, he started to use the pseudonym Allan Kardec, and was no longer as an spiritist, using his real name, Rivail Denisart. Then he started to sign Allan Kardec to everything that is really related to the Spiritism. The intention was to take his name, his personality out of the equation, because he was already very known as an intellectual. He was already responsible for the education of the French system, and his name would influence others, and he didn't want that. He didn't individuals to get into spirituals for what spirituals presents, not for what his name represented. And we'll see here the spirit to which Kardec and the spirits worked. There was a May of 56. By the end of 56, you have the first draft already ready to be published. And the Spirit of Truth, again, Kevin said, no, it's not good yet. We need to do more reparations on what you have over there. But in April of 1857, a book with 501 questions was published, the very first Spirits book, with the format that we know of Q&A. Slightly different because you divided the page in half. In one half of the page, you would have the questions and answers, and the other half would have his comments, of course, guided by the Spirit of Truth. And he was advised also at that time to not put everything out immediately, to publish that 501 questions, wait some time, give time for the formation of public opinion, let that opinion mature. And you see here the respect of the spirituality towards our free will, towards our limitations. Let they digest those 501 questions first, let they see what this doctrine is all about. If they are interested, we're going to put out the next. The book was a huge success. He didn't have much money. He used his own money to print all the books, so he could not print that many books. And again, it's a time when printing a book was a process, not like today that you can print a million pages in a matter of seconds. And there was maybe 100 pages in a day or so that you could do, and things are different. But whatever he published, it sold out immediately. And in 1860, right, he was able to come out with the second edition. And that second edition now is the format that we have, is the book that we have, is 1,019 questions, just as we have now. And it's pretty much the book that we have in hands today. So the first publication, April of 1857. The second publication, I don't have the month, but 1860. The Spirit's book is the cornerstone of the doctrine. It is you can say that it's the most important book because it contains in itself all the other books of codification. It answers in synthesis all the questions that you may have of our human condition. What are we? What are we doing here? Why are we here? Where do you go from here? What is the meaning of everything? It answers all the questions, okay? If one reads and don't find the answers, it is because we don't know how to read it yet. And that doesn't come from me. I believe in that. That comes from devout Peter Franco. And he proves, you can ask any question, I'll find the answer in the Spirit's book. Okay, but of course, we need to develop ourselves and know how to read this book. Emmanuel says that in the higher spheres where he lives, they still study the Spirit's book and they still learn from it. Now, Emmanuel is saying that to us, right? So for us to read this book 100 times back to back, we're not going to be able to really get this whole book in one lifetime. Why do I say that it contains all the books? Because the book itself is divided in 4 books. Book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, right? The first book, what am I? Deals with God. Is first cause, right? The title of the first book, first cause. The very first question of the book, what is God? Not who is God, but what is God? And that first part of the book, first cause, is completely developed in another book that is Genesis. That is, interesting enough, the last book of the codification was published in 1868. The second book of the Spirit's book is the spiritual world. And that coincides with the second book of the codification, that is the Minos book, that was published in 1861. I have to make notes because I can never remember dates, so don't think that I remember that, but from my head. The Minos book is the expansion in detail of the second book of the Spirit's book that deals with the spiritual world. The third book of the Spirit's book is called Moral Laws. And that moral laws is breakdown and detailed and explained and used many examples of the moral laws in a book that is the Gospel According to Spiritism that was published in 1864. With basically the moral teachings of Jesus Christ. And the fourth and last book of the Spirit's book is called Hope and Consolation. That is further developed in the book Heaven and Hell. And it's always important to make sure the subtitle of this book is Divine Justice According to Spiritism. Okay, because if you stick with just heaven and hell, we miss the boat over there. It's heaven and hell, divine justice, according to Spiritism, or in accordance to Spiritism. The format is one that we know now, Q&A, which is didactically, and again, Kardec was a professor of professors, is the easiest way to teach. For a question, give an answer. You number the questions. So if I'm interested in some topic, I can go to that part of the book. If I'm interested in the spiritual world, I go to the second book. And if I'm interested in something more specific, I'll go to a specific question. There is a number to it. So it's numbered to you. I mean, as Kardec wants to give us the food, chew it for us, and you just have the trouble swallowing it. And we still have trouble doing so, right? And the format of dividing books, as you already explained over here, the idea is to read the whole book. But if you are only interested in the moral laws, you have a book on the moral laws. You want to see the teachings of Jesus Christ? There you go. Which would be a little bit hard without having the basis that's provided on the rest of the book. But that's what we are looking for, that's where I search. So having this format allows for searching and researching of all the questions and all the problems of the human race. Right, so it is indeed the most important book. Now, if you're going direct into the introduction of the sort of Spiritism, I want you, Soraya, to read only the first paragraph of item 1 for me, please.
Okay. Introduction to the study of Spiritism. New words are needed to convey new ideas clearly and to avoid the inevitable confusion that ensues from using the same term for expressing different concepts. The words spiritual, spiritualist, and spiritualism each have a given meaning that is specific. To attribute a new meaning to these words by applying it to Spiritism merely increases the numerous causes of ambiguity that already exists. In actuality, spiritualism.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay.
We're not going to read the whole thing, but this first part of it, that tells us the necessity of having terminology, specific terminology for each sciences. Biology has its terminologies, right? Or the nomenclature comes from the Latin or the Greek, and if you have a good basis of those two languages, you pick the root of the word and you pretty much know what they are talking about, even if you don't know really the whole lecture. But if you know a little bit of Greek and Latin, you take the roots of the word and you know what that word will mean. Lawyers have their own terminology. If you have them talking among themselves, you think that is a different language, because you'll be, what are they saying here, right? Amongst the physicists, they all have the proper terminologies. So what Kardec's telling us that every science has its words, and the words are important. And new ideas, new words should have, new science, new doctrine should have new words. So the word spiritism was invented, was created by Kardec. And as I mentioned, in 1853, there was already a spiritualist church. There was a lot of spiritualist church in the US. And Kardec thought that it was important to have one word that is proper of this new doctrine that is just emerging. And he created the word Spiritism. And to differentiate, spiritualism is basically the opposite of materialism. Spiritualism is the understanding or belief, if you prefer, that there is something more than physical, more than matter. If you have that, you are a spiritualist. So all the religious individuals are spiritualists because they believe that there is something that survives the physical body. Where does it go? What happens to it? It's a different matter, but it's something there, right? So all spiritists are the spiritualists, but not all spiritualists are the spiritists. The word spiritist, of course, was also invented, created by Kardec, to denominate those who are the students or practitioners of this new doctrine called Spiritism. And other words, and he goes on here and he talks about words like soul, which at that time, and even today, is a very vague word. You use the word soul for many reasons, many different ways: soulmate, soul this, soul that. And Kardec found that it was important that their word in Spiritism had a very specific and defined meaning. So as we're going to see in the study of the book, the word soul in Spiritism is an incarnated spirit. So every time that in the study of Spiritism, when we're here and it's here the word soul, we are referring of incarnated spirit. We may make the mistake and use it wrongly, used to store the word soul for discarnated spirit. It's wrong. It's wrong in accordance with Spiritism. It may not be wrong outside of it. But in the science, when you say the word soul, you understand that it's incarnated spirit. So right now I am a soul because I'm incarnate. My grandmother is not a soul because she's discarnate. Right? But that's in Spiritism. And Kardec is, again, we have to use words properly. Every science has to have terminology. Right? In biology, you're not going to say a dog, you're going to say a canis familiaris. That's the name that you use in biology for that animal with 4 legs that we call dogs. Right? And if you're going to say it's not a dog, it's a wolf, then it's canis lupus. That's the name of dogs in biology. And that's what you're going to use if you are dealing with the biology aspect. Outside of it, when you know hanging out in the park, you can say whatever you want, right? And he goes to other words, the words vital. If you explain what's vital, what is a vital fluid, what is vitality, all those words have a proper specific meaning in the spiritual. We're going to study it in the first part of this book very soon enough. But there is very well defined terminology for everything. Okay. On the second part, I don't need to read anything there. Just a minute. So, yeah, I already called this about the soul. On the third part, he goes back and give a brief history of the birth of Spiritism, and basically what you have said before, 1948, with the table turnings and the table tippings and the Fox sisters here in the U.S., the origin of the Ouija board-like instrument that was used for the spirits to write using the letters on that board. In the 50s and the 1850s, the incredible popularity of the sciences in Europe, but everybody was more involved with the curiosity, was there just for the fun of it. And the phenomenon was primarily a physical phenomenon, so with no intelligence behind, not providing an intelligence answer to anything. In part 4, he comes and talking about the phenomenon now is taking a different aspect. Now there has been intelligent answers being given to questions of people in those sciences. And Kardec says here, sorry guys. You can just read the first paragraph also. So right there, please. Only the first paragraph.
Okay. If these phenomena had been limited to the movement of objects, they would have remained within the realm of physical science, as we already explained. This proved to be very far from the actual case, as these phenomena were revealed to be only the tip of an even more extraordinary iceberg. However, it was soon discovered that the impulsion communicated to inert objects was not merely the product of a blind mechanical force, but the action of an intelligent cause. This discovery opened up a whole new field of observation and promised to resolve many mysteries. Is there, in fact, an intelligent power? That is the question at the heart of the matter. If such a power exists, what is it? What is its nature and origin? Is it superhuman? These are the secondary questions that naturally stemmed from the first.
Thank you. So there, 1856 or so, there's this big leap, right? You're going for just entertainment things, tables levitating, tapes turning, witchboard-like instruments giving answers to futile questions. And now we come into greater depth, and now we question, wait a minute, if there is answers being provided, there is an intelligence behind. Now, it's no longer in the realm of the physical sciences. It's no longer in the realm of defying gravity, of defying electricity, or working with electricity, whatever the case may be. Now we jump into something completely different here. And then where the study of the spirits become more intensified. And that's when Kardec received the revelation of its mission and say, spirits. So whoever is providing those answers are basically us without a physical body. And initiate the whole process of the codification that comes with this book, naturally, right? If there is intelligent answers, there have to be an intelligence behind of it. Okay? Then, as we move on, Kardec now start to give us some critical points of the doctrine. Sorry, just a minute. As Kardec go in depth of his studies of the spirits, as we get the understanding of his mission and start to receive messages and more messages, one of the things that happened that I missed to say was development of something called a planchette, which is basically an instrument that they developed with a pencil that would be in contact with a piece of paper, lightly touched the paper with no human hands on it. And that little instrument, using that pencil, would write in the paper full sentences, no longer using the board that have to go letter to letter to letter to letter to form a word. No, with the planchette, the spirits would actually write to the whole words themselves, which was an advancement. And Kardec later concluded that not even that was necessary. That those mediums, those individuals were able to receive the thoughts of the spirits, they could write it themselves. And that increased the communications speed and quality tremendously. So Kardec understood, and again, is the work, the story of Kardec to reach that conclusion that we don't need the physical phenomena anymore. We didn't need to have an instrument to write those things. We didn't need, we can say now, the physical phenomena, the ectoplasm, to have those communications written to us, and began the process of using psychography. And with that, the critical points of this new doctrine was established by Kardec. And I would like you to read, starting, and we'll now briefly summarize, and I'll let you know where to stop.
Okay. We will now briefly summarize the critical points of Spiritism that the spirits have communicated to us in order that we may easily counter certain objections. God is eternal, absolute, immaterial, unique, all-powerful, supremely just and good. God has created the universe, which comprises all beings, animate and inanimate, material and immaterial. Materials beings make up the visible or physical world, and immaterial beings make up the invisible or spiritual world. In other words, the spirit world. The spiritual world is the normal, original, and eternal world pre-existed to and surviving everything else. The physical world is only secondary. It could cease to exist or never have existed. And this would have no effect on the essence of the spiritual world. Spirits temporarily don an ephemeral material envelope, which is destroyed upon death, and their freedom is restored. Among the different spirits that have reached a particular degree of development, this is what gives humankind its moral and intellectual superiority over all others. The soul is an incarnate spirit whose body solely serves as an envelope. A human being is made up of three things. One, the body, or material being, similar to animals and animated by the same vital principle. Two, the soul, or immaterial being, a spirit incarnate in the body. Three, the link that bonds the soul and the body together, the liaison between matter and spirit. People, therefore, has two natures. Their bodies give them a physical animal nature, of which they possess the instincts, and their soul gives them a spiritual nature. The perispirit is a semi-material envelope connecting the body and the spirit. Death is a destruction of the body's material envelope, but the spirit keeps its second envelope, the perispirit. This envelope is an ethereal body that is invisible to us in its normal state, but spirits can occasionally render it visible and even tangible, such as the case of apparitions. A spirit is not an abstract, undefined being conjured with by our imaginations. It is a real, distinct being that, in some cases, can be seen, heard, and touched. Spirits belong to different classes and are not equal in power, intelligence, knowledge, or integrity. Those of the highest order are superior spirits, set apart from those beneath them by their perfection, knowledge, proximity to God, and love of goodness. There are angels or pure spirits. The other classes are progressively further removed from this perfection. Lower ranking spirits are inclined to most of our passions, hatred, envy and jealousy, pride, and so on. They take pleasure in immortality and wrongdoing. There are some who are neither good nor bad, but are mischievous and troublesome rather than malicious. These spirits may be classified as capricious or foolish spirits. Spirits do not permanently belong to the same order. They are all destined to ultimately reach perfection by passing through the different degrees of the spirit hierarchy. This betterment takes place through incarnation, which is imposed on some as an atonement and on others as a mission. Material life is a trial that must be experienced many times until absolute perfection has been attained. It is a type of filter from which spirits emerge more or less purified.
Thank you. So Kardec provides over here the very critical points, the aspects of the doctrine. And it goes from, of course, the beginning of everything, God. Kardec starts everything with the beginning of everything, and that's God. And tells us our understand, not belief, of this creator and provider of everything, the one that is infinite, for having no beginning and no end, and they created everything, material and immaterial. And then continue to say the nature of us, spirit. Speaks about the physical body that is perishable, that belongs here, goes back to nature when it stops working. Speaks about a ethereal body, a petty spirit that you keep with us when you go back to the spiritual world. He speaks of the different words in the spiritual dimension in accordance to our moral stage, right? He speaks of a level of the Christ, where Jesus and his equals reside, that we will reside there, giving us a few billion years, perhaps, in human years, right? But eventually, with the law of progress, are all predestined to reach that degree of purification. And there is a variation of words in the spiritual world that is proper for our moral stage. And through the law of progress, we go from one stage to another, moving up, always progressing. There is no regression. And it's done in accordance to our effort to acquire moral progress. And it talks over here about morality, the teachings of Christ, basically. So these are the primary criteria of the doctrine of Spiritism. It teaches us. And if there is a few more others here, but the few more that he keeps saying here is consequence of what you read here at this point. So there is no need for us to read each one of them, because we're going to study this book, each one and all of them. And then starting at 8, item 8 and above, to the last item, which is 13, I believe. No, 18. Kardec basically does the conclusion of the Spirit's book, and it's the same discussion that he has in one very small book that is called What is a Spiritism? It is basically an answer or a response to all the questions of those who oppose Spiritism, or for those who doesn't see the logic and the rationality of Spiritism. Kardec provides those items, the rationality and the logic of Spiritism. There is no need for us to read everything over here, because again, we just completed the conclusion, and that conclusion is based on that. So this is pretty much what I have to say in regard to the introduction of the study of Spiritism. Those who have been with us understand very well the complexity of this book, and that's why we keep reading and reading and reading. Is still, you come to a question, what was this question here before? I never seen this question before. And that is the 5th, 6th time they read this book completely. And anyone who is serious in this study will see that it's true, that we all go through that. Devout Pereira Kam says that he still studies. Not read, studies the Spirit's book, and sometimes to find surprised, find self surprised to read something they haven't noticed before. Again, the book is the same. We are not. We progress. Hopefully, we progress. Hopefully, we apply ourselves to make ourselves better, and we'll develop. We're going to augment our ability to see things in this book that you have not seen before, because now you have bigger eyes to see bigger things.
Yes.
Is there any questions, any comments? Anything that you think I missed? Anything that you are curious?
No, all I can say is, Elmo, it's wonderful that we go through this every time we end up the study of the Spirit's book, because it opens up so much. You believe you know, and then you go through this over and over again, and we get to know that we don't know so much as we think we do. And it's so important to always continue this because it leads you to a better understanding. No matter how many times we read the Spirit's book, you explained it so well, and it's a very important concept that the study of Spiritism, if we don't have it, we don't understand it. That's why it's so important to continue this study and start over and over. How many times we study the book, this beautiful book, the Spirit's book. It's so important, and I'm so glad that you explained and you have the knowledge of breaking down what's the most important thing, and I thank you for that, because it's work. We have to study, and study is work, and we have to get concepts all together and understand what we're studying. So we thank you. We thank you for this. And hopefully one day we'll be able to explain it just like you did today. So thank you.
It is an exercise of humility, right? Because one could say, I don't have to do that again. I have done enough.
Right.
One must be humble enough to say, I have so much to learn yet. I'm just starting. It's just my, baby steps towards that. Let me do it again. How many times does a baby has to fall on the butt before he can actually stand up and walk without falling again? With this doctrine, we have those babies, getting up and falling, getting up and falling, and every time that getting up and falling is like starting this book from time to time, and every time that you do, our legs become stronger, our balance becomes stronger until we are able to really walk forward without any problem. And then comes the challenge. I walks backwards, like goes sideways. We still don't have trouble doing, right? And it is an exercise of sharing, of practicing selflessness, sharing with one another what have one gap. When we all read the same question, we all read the same answers. And by the way, in the study of the Spiritual book, the questions are equally important as the answer. You really have to understand the question so you can understand the answer, right? And someone will see that answer or that question from a different angle than someone else. And that different angle will complement the understand for everyone who is doing that studies group. To me, that's the greatest value of study group. And that I keep saying that is not a teacher here. We are all learning together. We're all sharing the same book, also sharing the very little that you have to offer. That's why I really stimulate questions and participation. So you see things because of your own experience, because of things that you've gone through in your life, present or past lives. You will be able to see things from a different angle, and it will complement the knowledge for everyone present to that studies. Yes. As long it does not contradict, because if it contradicts the opposite, then one is wrong. No, if one say right and one says left, one needs to be wrong. But if it's different but harmonious, then it's always constructive, always builds more and more and more. And every time that you do that study of this book, we are developing ourselves, we are getting our legs stronger, getting our balance stronger, understanding this book better. And if you do so, we understand ourselves better, and you understand the creation, not to be very presumptuous that we're going to become God of it, because you're not. But will give us the enough ammunition to go to the next level. Right? It's like in the martial arts. That real martial arts, not fight. Right? Okay. And you become a black belt and you think now you've done everything, and your son say you come to say no. Now you have gained the ability to start to learn. People think, hey, now I'm a black belt, I need a black belt, now I've reached everything. Nah. You just get your first step towards the ability of learning martial arts. I think this book gives us that. Allow us to get to be a black belt. Then we can start to learn things that is beyond our comprehension at our level right now. But if you master this book, chances are you will not need to reincarnate this planet anymore. Higher sphere of existence and face higher challenges, which is always good.
Yes.
I'm going to leave the, of course, we are over already. Next week with the prolegomena. And Soraya, can you make a final prayer, please?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And now, dear Father, as we come to the end of this beautiful lesson, with our hearts full of gratitude, we thank you for allowing us here again to start the Spirit's book for so many times. And still, may we continue to go over and over until we become what we should become, good spiritual beings here on this planet Earth. We thank our Father, Jesus Christ, our spiritual benefactors, our guardian angels that are always with us. We ask as we leave here today, be able to take all that we've given here today in our hearts, in our spirit, to become better human spiritual beings, to help family members and all that are surrounding us. We thank you, dear Lord, and we ask as we leave here today, be able to continue to pray throughout this week, and especially the beginning of a new year, where we understand the need for prayers for all that are suffering in this world. May light and love and faith surround them always, and never to give up. We ask for the help of those that are countries that are undeveloped, for the hospitals, the hospices, the homeless, all that are going through so much pain and suffering. May we continue to pray for them. We pray, dear Father, for our SGNY, our teachers, our mediums, all helpers that continue to work toward God's love. We pray, dear Father, for our family members and all that are in need, and to remember to keep ourselves in prayers in our homes, helping our family members and all that are in need in this world. We thank you, dear Lord. We thank you for the United States Spiritist Federation, the United States Spiritist Councils. May we continue to join our study groups and return again next week. And with this in mind, dear Lord, we ask permission to close our meeting today. So be it.
Thanks, everyone. So next Sunday, with the stories of the book Between Heaven and Earth. Ron will not be here again.
Okay.
Put up with me again.
Oh, that's great. That's good. Thank you, Elmo.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.